On the 19th of February 2012, a celebration takes place here in the grounds of the South African Jewish Museum in Cape Town. This occasion marks the opening of a retrospective exhibition of the works of sculptor Herman Wald. The son of a rabbi, he was born in Hungary in 1906 and died in South Africa in 1970 at the age of 64. His work, largely disregarded after his death, now re-emerges. Through this exhibition, his genius and his art are brought to life.
Good evening. Welcome to a fantastic exhibition. And the Shechina that you will see around the Arna Kodesh in the Old Shul really summarize the spirit of this exhibition. When his father died, Louis was 12 years old, and he spent the last 3 years of his life on a project to revive the reputation of Herman Wald, his father, and to bring back his memory and his career and his art. I've never met anybody more passionate than Louis about any enterprise. He's worked day and night, collating the works, casting the works, mounting the works, and even having to see the Rosh, the Avbeth Din, to try and get permission to put up the statue of Kriya, which you see on the right-hand side. With those words, thank you very much, Louis.
Good evening, everybody. My speech isn't going to be very coherent because I didn't sleep that much last night. Neither did many other people working on the show. But I think the results will speak for themselves. Possibly the most enjoyable part of this whole enterprise is the people that I've come to know and trust and learn from. It's the whole array of people that contribute to an enterprise of this scale. The name of this exhibition is The Wings of the Shekhinah. Well, this was a commission my dad did for the Berea Synagogue in 1967. And they were done in beaten copper. But the important thing is that there was a guy that actually beat the copper 45 years ago. Would you stand up, Adrian Schneider? And can you imagine our pleasure when we realized that he was in a position to restore the wings for this exhibition? And I'm sure we'd all agree that he did an astounding job. Robert Kaplan, your support has been fantastic, and without you this wouldn't have happened, simple. And Hayden, it's been an honor to have you involved, and I think the exhibition will speak for itself.
Thank you, Louis. Mr. Robert Kaplan, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be here this evening. I'm working for the first time in partnership with the Jewish Museum. I saw this exhibition as really just a continuation of the kind of work that we are doing at Ezekiel Museums of Cape Town in researching lost South African art histories. We have a great tradition of sculpture by Jewish artists in South Africa. But Herman Wald is a name that, even to me, I have to admit, I wasn't really aware of up until about a year ago. But then when somebody said, oh yes, he's the man who did the Impala Fountain in Johannesburg, and immediately I knew who they were talking about. He's an artist who worked very seriously on the interface between art and faith, art and law, and art and philosophy. He was, in every sense, a polemical artist. Perhaps not so much in his work, which tended to be stylistically conservative, but certainly in his utterances. And in his utterances, he challenged the Jewish community itself on the nature of the second commandment, which prohibited the creation of graven images. And he had various things to say. If Moses had written the 10 commandments instead of cutting them, they would have remained only a document instead of a monument. He sees the 10 commandments as a work of art. They were carved, not written. And very often he used to confront conservative Jewish visitors to his exhibitions and ask them, why aren't you keen on buying my work? And they would say, well, there is this problem. I'm very observant and I can't because it's a sculpture and it's against the second commandment. And then he would ask them a rather challenging question. How do you keep the other 9 commandments? And he never got an answer. In many ways, particularly because of the wings of the Shekhinah, we are reminded of the great parallels there are between Herman Wald and the description we have in the Old Testament of the perfect artist, the man who was appointed by God, who informed Moses that this is the man who will create the Ark of the Covenant, and that was Bezalel. And the name Bezalel means in the shadow of God, and it indicates the role of the artist and the use of his talents as a way of fulfilling Jewish spiritual goals. And I think for all his confrontational statements that Herman Wald was such an artist. And in his synagogue work in particular, I think we need to think about what is going to happen to the future of these, which are in fact to be found in a lot of synagogues that have been deconsecrated and abandoned. Now, a few words about sculpture exhibitions. 3-dimensional works are a lot more difficult to work with than 2-dimensional ones. They're heavy, they take up much more space, and somehow painting exhibitions always seem much more compact and easier to work on. Perhaps that's a reason why we don't see many large-scale sculpture exhibitions. But I'd like to thank all of the people who have worked on this show with me. Gert Kirchhoff, who involved himself in a great amount of conservation work on the bronzes, and many other conservators who were brought in because of many of the works that we're going to be looking at tonight have needed to be fixed up because they were not in a good state of repair. They had been neglected for a long time. And as you will see in the exhibition, there are a great many works that sadly have been lost or that could not be brought here. Those have been represented by means of photographs. Finally, I would like to pay tribute to Louis again for his passion and his commitment and his drive, his obsessiveness, and for creating a wonderful database that I'm sure you can all access on the internet. There's an enormous amount of information on Herman Wald, and we are planning a publication. We have employed the scholarly talents of Professor Elizabeth Rankin from the University of Auckland in New Zealand, the research of Uta Ben Yosef, Andrea Lewis and Devis Iosifon, as well as myself, will be represented in this publication when it comes out. So I look forward to seeing you all again on an evening when we can have a proper launch of that publication.
Thank you very much, Hayden. In the last 2 years, there's been a parallel project for me, a second track to this exhibition. That's 2 major commissions for the University of the Witwatersrand. One of the major motivators of these 2 works has been Professor Cathy Munro. Her drive, moving these projects forward to large-scale works by Herman Wald that were erected at WITS in the last 3 months. It's the 90th birthday of WITS this year, and the 2 works will be celebrated as part of the university celebrations. So I'm delighted to invite Cathy to come and address you.
Evening, everyone. It's a great honor to be a speaker today, because we're here to celebrate the work, the legacy, and the life of an extraordinary 20th century man, sculptor, and artist, Herman Wald. The story is one of life, love, humanity, loss, pain, survival, migration, and new stimuli, new routes across continents. This is also a story of family, memory, and commemoration through 3, and one can even say 4 generations. Religious and secular themes come together, inspiring the work you see today and the genius of Wald. We're seeing the results of many years of hard work on the part of the Wald family, the brothers Louis and Michael, to find, research, develop, and present again to South Africa the rich body of work left by Herman Wald in his studio. Louis and Michael have worked hard to identify, describe, give coherence and significance to this great body of work. And we should also remember tonight the work of Herman's late wife, Vera, who during the long years of her widowhood worked tirelessly to preserve and keep memory alive. Because Herman died far too soon and very suddenly at 64 in 1970. A retrospective exhibition was actually held in 1976 in Parktown in Johannesburg, and it was actually opened by the then Vice-Chancellor of the University of the Witwatersrand, Professor Bazoli. Like many Johannesburg citizens, I first became aware of the work of Herman Wald when I took pleasure in the Cascade of Impala, the Stampede as it is called, the great work commissioned by Harry Oppenheimer in memory of his father, Sir Ernest Oppenheimer. I lunched in that park with my packed sandwiches when working as a young economist at Barclays' International Division. Later, the much-loved Impala were mutilated and partly melted, but incredibly, the work was recovered and restored by Michael Wald, and it's today positioned in front of the Anglo-American building at 44 Main Street. As a young person, I also knew and admired the powerful biblical Kriya figure of Moses, rending his garments. It was one of the works that actually caused me to question European history and what had happened. And you can see the strength, the authority, and the pain. They're palpable and visible. Another recognized and acclaimed work was his monument to martyred European Jewry at the Johannesburg West Park Cemetery. And it was unveiled in 1959, and today it's still the site of the annual remembrance service, and it still impacts on so many families. More recently, I re-engaged with Herman Wald when Louis Wald was introduced to me by Natalie Knight, our art curator on the West Campus at Wits. Louis burst into my dean's office with verve and enthusiasm to tell us about the opportunity for Wits to acquire the giant mining figure, which Wald had presented to Mr. Harry Oppenheimer as a model and possibility for the Kimberley Commission of a fountain to remember Sir Ernest Oppenheimer there. The Oppenheimers chose 5 figures of a somewhat different dimension, and that original giant figure remained through the years in the Wald studio. And the Wald brothers donated the work of art to Wits. And so we have now acquired the unknown miner. We also acquired a work which you will see here on show today. This is Man and His Soul. Please take a look at the maquette that is on exhibition. I just fell in love with the picture that Louis showed me. We enthused and then went into long months of casting the work, and it was then installed at the crossroads of the old University Avenue and Victory Avenue on the West Campus. And we're going to then again celebrate this year with an unveiling. It's a piece of Joburg heritage to be preserved. And I think that's how we view this work that we see tonight. We know that Wald's industry and productivity was prolific. His is the very strange case of an artist whose work was loved and appreciated. But amazingly, this work was not acquired by the major museums and galleries. He didn't leave a comprehensive record of all he'd worked on. There's no serious study. We're going to be putting that right. So this retrospective exhibition is an extremely important one. And I would like to thank Hayden Proud for your readiness to connect with us in Johannesburg, and the Jewish Museum in giving their full support to bringing this exhibition to life. I think that the hurtful neglect of the work of Wald by the art establishment and the lack of a critical reception in the decades after his death should be put aside. We should recall rather the success of Wald in reaching a wider public through his diverse commissions, religious and secular, during his lifetime. And this is the opportunity presented in this amazing exhibition. I think it will lead to a serious reevaluation, a celebration, and appreciation of the works and the art. Wald brought his European heritage to his adopted country, but he became a South African of note, fame, and achievement. And we see the African themes too in his work. His work is his legacy. As Louis commented to me, we are simply providing the opportunity for the work to speak for itself. Meanwhile, take your eyes and your spirit on a journey to feed your soul as you walk through this exhibition. Enjoy, feel uplifted by this remarkable story of a survival, life, creativity, rebirth, and rediscovery. I thank you very much.
There's a gentleman sitting next to Joel Kaplan called Cecil Wolfson. And he's a friend, he's a family member, but the biggest connection is that Nelson Mandela, 11 years ago, opened this museum. And his father, Philip Wolfson, was a legal associate of Nelson Mandela. And when Nelson Mandela was released, he remembered Philip, and it gave me great pleasure to call on Cecil to read a short speech from his dad.
Thank you, Robert, for those kind words. It gives me much pleasure to be able to read to you this evening some words that my dad, Philip Wolfson, prepared, but which he's unable to deliver tonight because of distance, altitude, and bless him, at 89, he's still got work commitments in Johannesburg. I've known Louis since school days, and it wasn't unusual for the Wolfson family to spend many Sunday afternoons at the Wald home in Parktown with Herman, his doting wife Vera, and Louis and Michael and sister Pamela. Secondly, as Robert's mentioned, there is the connection with the Kaplan Kushlik side. My mom was a Kushlik, and it just coincidentally happened I was sitting next to Robert on a bus coming back from a music center that the Kaplan Kushlik family had inaugurated in Soweto, when Robert told me excitedly that Louis had approached him and there was going to be this memorable exhibition of Herman's fine works being hosted at the Jewish Museum. A couple of days after Robert had told me this, I was sitting at a Shabbat dinner and A.B. Schneier was next to me, and he too was very excited about the exhibition, and I asked him why. And he explained how he was the person who Herman had approached to actually manufacture the Shekhinah, the wings. And the process, he explained, took 4 months. And with the refurbishment, he told me he had to put in another month. And the search, he explained in great detail how after the Berea Shul was closed down, the wings went from warehouse to warehouse till they were ultimately found at the Sandringham Gardens. Without more ado, I'm now going to proceed to read my dad's speech. He says, it was in about 1960 that my late wife Edith and I met Herman Wald and his wife Vera, and Edith and I were frequent visitors to Herman and Vera at their home in Parktown, North Johannesburg. There we had the privilege of spending time in Herman's studio and being shown some of his completed works and also works in progress. Herman loved to explain to us the meaning and purpose of his works. It was always a pleasure to converse at his high intellectual level. Our meetings with him were uplifting for us, as they would have been had Einstein or Freud or Aristotle met with us and informed us of their work, thinking, and ideas. In March 1970, shortly before his death, I had the honor and pleasure, at Herman's request, to open an exhibition for him at the then President Hotel in Johannesburg city centre. I am still a proud possessor of one of Herman's unique sculptures, which he presented to me in gratitude for what I did for him. He described the sculpture as the thinker because that was the impression he always had of me. It was a great honor to me when Herman's son Louis called and requested that I join in opening this prestigious exhibition. This brought back fond memories of Herman and the many hours we spent together and the friendship we shared. It is also interesting to know that this is the 26th exhibition of Herman's sculptures, most of them having taken place in Johannesburg. This exhibition will remain of historic importance as being one of the great art exhibitions in South Africa. I extend all good wishes to the Wald family for success in this superb exhibition. Thanks go particularly to Louis for his tireless work in arranging the exhibition, and to Robert Kaplan and the Jewish Museum staff for making it possible to host this most memorable experience. And with that, on Lou's authority, I declare the exhibition open. Thank you.
In Carved Thoughts, his book of aphorisms, Herman Wald wrote, "Cutting against the grain in the arts is like cutting into stone the commandment, 'Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images.' But Herman Wald's work, seen by some as a defiance of the second commandment, is quite the reverse. It is a grateful celebration, a responsible fulfillment of the gift he so cherished." Visit the exhibition on www.hermanwaldexhibition.com.